Welcome to Safety Spectrum, your environmental health and safety connection. This program is a presentation of the Michigan Safety Conference. For almost a century, the annual conference has provided credible educational opportunities and valuable support to the safety and health practitioner by offering 120 instructional programs along with exhibits highlighting the latest in safety equipment, instrumentation, and demonstrations. To learn more about the conference, please find us at safetyconference.org. Welcome to Safety Spectrum. I'm your host, Sheila Ide. This program is sponsored by the Michigan Safety Conference, and our topic today is connecting with MDOT. You know, some have jokingly said Michigan has two seasons, winter and road construction. In a follow-up to our program on road worker safety with MITA, I'm interviewing a representative from MDOT, the Michigan Department of Transportation, to discuss his thoughts on safer and better roads, grant projects that will hopefully impact work zone safety, and what drivers can do to help themselves. Chris Brookes is a Michigan Department of Transportation work zone delivery engineer and has been with the department for 15 years. Chris is a technical member of the National Committee on Uniform Traffic Control Devices, Temporary Traffic Control Committee, and an active member of the American Traffic Safety Service Association. His position on the Traffic Control Committee and Innovations Council is at the national level, and he's also a member of the Michigan ATSSA Chapter Board. Chris is a recipient of the ATSSA National Safety Award and the ARTBA Traffic Industry Division Jake Landon Highway Safety Award. Chris has a BA in Civil Engineering from Michigan State University, so go green.
Go white.
Thanks for being with me today, Chris.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, since you work with a national group, how do you find Michigan is unique with their road issues?
Yeah, so one of the things that's definitely a unique challenge for Michigan, and it really applies to a lot of the Midwest states, is just the a lot of the seasonal weather differences that we have, but also too, Michigan's unique in the fact that you can drive 7 hours and we have a diverse cross section of roadways. From ranging from the roadways in Metro Detroit and the high traffic volumes to your northern Michigan lower volume traffic to US 2 all the way going across the UP. Each one of those presents a little bit different aspect of how you need to fix that road, maintain it, and just the different things that you need to do. So Michigan really has it's fun because we get to talk to all the different states that are out there, and we always have something that kind of we can relate to all the other states. We're unique in that sense.
Well, yeah, we're the Mittens state. We got to be unique. So you also have to deal with the Mackinac Bridge, right?
Yes, yes, the Mackinac Bridge is an amazing thing. If you have not crossed or been up there, I highly suggest going and doing that. I was also fortunate enough that we did some training for the guys that are out there to make sure they're setting up and doing everything safe because as you know, that was down to one lane in each direction. So we went up there and made sure they were doing everything right. And then we were fortunate enough to get to and had a great day to do that. And it is a very tight squeeze, that is for sure. But it was an awesome view and an awesome perspective to be able to do that. And that's not something that everyone gets to do. So we were very fortunate that we were able to do that. And it's just a beautiful sight and just an amazing piece of engineering, the bridge. So everyone's always asking questions about that. But yeah, that's one of the coolest things that I think we have in Michigan.
Well, as you know, nobody goes in the UP without having a trailer behind them, right?
Mhm.
They go camping. So you're right, it's there. I used to work in Michigan OSHA, and we actually would inspect the bridge and climb all the way up into the towers and down into the footings and stuff. So I never did get the chance to do that, but it would have been interesting. So can you describe MDOT's role and responsibility?
Yeah, so our main goal is really just making sure our roadways are maintained. And from my aspect, is making sure that everyone gets to and from their destination in a safe, efficient way. And really just want everyone to go home at night or get to where they're going safely. Towards zero deaths is one of the goals that we have. We want zero injuries, zero fatalities, zero crashes on our roadway. Um, Zero may seem like a non-attainable goal to some because that is very difficult, but that's what we strive for because, if it's your loved one or someone else's loved one, that's not acceptable. So the only number that we can really accept is zero. Maybe one day we'll get there, but it's a long road, but that's what we're here for. And we're always working to strive to improve that overall safety.
Well, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the technology that's out there, but maybe this isn't a fair question, but how what percentage impact do you think good roads have in accidents compared to driver error?
I would say that in my experience, one of the leading causes of the crashes is just the driver distraction. This day and age, there's so much distractions and there's so many people that don't take driving seriously that I feel like that really has a major factor in that. Yes, could a pothole or something cause someone to, blow out a tire, things like that. Sure, those things occasionally could happen, but the majority of the crashes that we look at, I would say, are due to either someone not paying attention, someone being distracted. Excessive speeding is another big one where that would cause that. So all things that are very preventable, if the driver just takes a little bit more personal onus and personal responsibility, and understanding that driving is a privilege and it's something that needs to be taken very seriously.
Well, it could be mechanical issues too with your car, making sure that your car is in good working order, the brakes and steering and all, all those good things.
Yep.
Tires,
Making sure you have tire pressure in the wintertime, making sure your tire treads are good. So there is a lot of, you know, external factors that go into that, can reduce your brake, maybe prevent a crash from occurring and have it be a near miss if your vehicle is up to date, you making sure your brake pads aren't worn out, all those different things. And we try to design the roadway, to be forgiving, to make sure we have the proper line of sight. We don't have any strong major curves or things like that. Or if we do, we put up the cautionary sign. So really, if you pay attention to the warning signs, if you pay attention to that, abide by the rules and have a safe following distance for the conditions. Yes, it's Michigan. It's going to start snowing soon. Hopefully not on
Mhm.
Halloween this year.
Oh yeah. You have
Fingers
kids, I
crossed.
get it. Yeah.
I don't, the kids, my kids all get their Halloween costumes going, and then all of a sudden, like, I feel like the last couple of years, it's been one of the coldest days of the year for trick or treating. So hopefully, we won't have that. But those are some of the things that living in Michigan and just the unique weather patterns that we have, you really got to be aware of those things. And coming up now, I would highly recommend everyone going and making sure, checking your tire depth, your tread on your tires, making sure that's there, because all those things do play a factor and a role in that. But ultimately, I think that comes back to the driver and being responsible and making sure you're taking things seriously. Did you defrost your window all the way before you leave and not just scrape out the little
Oh yeah.
holes you're going through? Take the time to warm up your vehicle and do things like that. I think a lot of those external factors play a major role. So the weather conditions and the road conditions, they all do, but ultimately a lot of those things, the root cause for me of those crashes are the driver probably didn't do something that led to that happening. And
Hmm.
that's part of the reason I don't know if you notice, we are taught to refer to them as crashes and not accidents, because accidents are preventable and then crashes are what's occurs. So, it's a crash. It's not really an accident because something could have happened to potentially prevent it.
There's always multiple reasons for an accident, that's for sure, being in the safety business. And I actually looked this up. When I got my license in the Stone Age in the 60s, there were maybe 60 million cars on the road. Now there's like 200 million. So there's a lot more traffic than there used to be, is what I feel. And I dread my grandson getting his driver's license and having to deal with that, because experience also plays a role.
Eh,
A mature driver knows that, watch the wheels, when maybe they're going to turn in front. There's just things that you learn as you drive, and he's not going to know those things. So, inevitable to crash or whatever is going to happen, right?
Yeah, well, and then too, if you just look at the interface of the vehicle nowadays to even when I started driving, you used to be able to turn your air conditioning up by twisting a knob and change the radio station by hitting a button or two. And now you've kind of like, it's almost like you're operating a spaceship sometimes, where you've got so many screens and things like that to try to do. You can't really just look down. I remember when I first started driving, my dad made me do the test of, I had to close my eyes or put a blindfold on sitting in the driveway and point and say, hey, where's the air conditioning? Turn this up, turn this down. Where's the radio? Turn it on, turn it off. Not while driving, but I also had to know and where everything was within my vehicle and be able to do that without having to take my eyes off the road was kind of that point. So, just that building into, the distractions of your cell phone and things like that. But that's where the hands-free law and things like that. Once again, if you respect those laws that are in place and do those things, it really does set you up for success and being a safer driver.
Can you describe briefly the basic requirements in the work zone to guide drivers?
Yeah, so pretty much there'll be some form of temporary traffic control devices. So that would be anything from your drums or cones or concrete barrier wall, along with the road markings or pavement markings. So really those would be the things that would be in place. And then we would have signing alerting the motorist as to what's coming up. So we'd have our lead-in area, which is usually your work zone begins, your road work ahead, and then telling the motorist, is there lane shift or lane closure? And then we would have the devices that direct them out and through that area. And then once they get through that work zone, we would then have the end roadwork sign that would let the motorist know, hey, the roadwork's done, that work zone's done, we're back to normal driving conditions.
Now, back when I was a safety person at a city government, we had road workers inside the city, and I actually had MDOT folks come in and talk with us about road signing because we had to do a job up on the freeway, which was unusual for us, and we needed to kind of get some guidance. So you folks still do that?
Yes, that is one of the things that I actually do as part of my job. One of the things that I really enjoy doing is teaching and doing training sessions like that for city, county, township, whoever we're able to reach out to. I go to a lot of conferences and speak at a lot of the safety conferences that companies will put on and give, an hour's talk about some just general work zone safety tips and tricks and how to stay safe inside the work zone and how to make sure things are set up properly. Because if we set the work zone up properly, motorists are more likely to respect it. If we don't take the care and time and effort to set things up properly, then the motorist loses that respect and doesn't respect what's going on because, if it says the right lane's closed and the left lane's closed, if we couldn't even get the signs right, why would the motorist then respect those and follow them? So there's a lot of onus on that too, and just making sure
Trust
that
you.
things are
Yeah.
done correctly.
I inadvertently did the zipper correctly the other day going to Grand Rapids. I wasn't paying attention totally because it didn't look like anybody was moving over, and it ended up being all the way in the lane, even though the sign said use all lanes, and they don't. Everybody jumps over to the one lane. So I get all the way and I go, oh, the road is closed right there. But the motorist let me in. I thought, that's zippering, right?
Yeah, it's really just, it to me, the concept of driving is something that I feel like a lot of people don't take seriously or they don't act like a normal human sometimes, I guess is the best way to explain it. If we behaved at a grocery store or at an amusement park or at a convenience store with the way we cut in line and do things on the roadway, if we behaved like that when we weren't behind the wheel of a car, there'd be so many other problems. But you go to a Meijer or you go to a store and you're going walking through the line, everyone gets in one line, and then when the U scan opens up, you walk to the next one. No one's racing around people doing that. So it's really that calming approach that we have when we're in person, but we get in that vehicle and we get in that protection, that protected zone, and all of a sudden, people get angry or in a hurry, and they just don't respect others sometimes when that's happening. And that is one of the leading causes, of those crashes where people are not letting someone in, they're not having that safe following distance. So I think there's a lot to do with that. The best way I like to explain the zipper merge and zipper about it. If you've ever been fortunate enough to go to an amusement park, if you go to an amusement park and there's a line for a ride and it's an off-peak time, it's not busy, there's usually that queue that you can walk through with all the ropes. And there's nothing worse than having to walk back and forth down those lines when there's no one in line there. So zipper merging is kind of the same, is where if we don't need that space because there's not congestion, then we don't want to use that space. But if there's congestion, we want to shorten the length of that queue because we don't want to go past the next exit, which then could prevent someone from being able to get off or have an unexpected backup. So if everyone uses the both lanes going up there, then there is no room for anybody to cut off. So if we're all doing that together and taking turns, like we learned in kindergarten or in preschool, back to the roots, right? Being nice and kind and all those good things, then that would have that be a lot more successful. But unfortunately, that is not the way that society sometimes drives, and that's what has a lot to do with the lack of success of that working. Is it takes everyone working together to make that work, just like a zipper. If you ever had your zipper and you get a shirt stuck in it or a tooth broken off of it, the zipper doesn't work. And everyone's always had that zipper that gets stuck, and it's such a pain in the, pain in the butt to do that. But it's the same concept. If one person doesn't cooperate, they can really make that whole thing not function. And that's sometimes why people get frustrated, is because there's those individuals that take it upon themselves to not be part of the team, which then cause that to happen. So,
I hear you. Though I would watch a TV show that was called Shopping Cart Wars. That would be interesting.
we, we've talked about doing a PSA jokingly about, what it would be like if we just had someone driving around in a shopping cart like they do in the cars, cutting everyone off, and seeing how that would, compare and play. And we haven't pulled the trigger on that yet, but it's still something that I
Oh, I
really
think we need it. That would stick in people's minds. So, how do you describe your work, and what do you do to folks outside of your do for folks outside of your industry?
So, so this happened actually just the other day. I was driving my oldest to watch one of his buddies in a football game, and we drove through a couple work zones, and he knows has a general idea of what I do, and he kind of asked me, and I explained to him, the way I explained it to him was, I keep everyone that's out there safe. I try to come up with new products, new items, new technologies, different things to make sure that those workers that are out there are doing everything properly to keep them safe. To an older crowd or an older person, I would say my job's kind of considered like, if you're looking at a sports analogy, I'm a big sports guy. A football team, I would say that I would be equated to the offensive lineman, which I was when I was in high school. Played center. Um, but with that, it's like, if you do your job well, if we do our job great, no one really notices us. It's kind of a thankless effort from that standpoint of, you drive through a work zone or construction zone, not many people are like, oh, that really went smooth. I didn't have any issues. But if you mess up and there's a massive delay and you get stuck in traffic for a half hour, everyone starts complaining, just like if the offensive lineman gets a holding penalty on a long touchdown pass. Everyone remembers that, but they don't remember the great blocks that they had for the touchdowns that they did score. They just remember the ones that got called back. So
Oh, they'll
kind of
notice if the center
thankless.
didn't hike it right, though. They'll
Correct. Or they
remember that.
fumbled the yes, or they fumbled the snap.
Yeah.
That's happened a couple times. Every once in a while, it does occasionally happen. Fortunately for me, I didn't do that too often, but I did have one or two that hit the ground. We didn't lose them, but we did have one or two that did hit the ground. So
Yeah, that happens. We were talking earlier about visible progress. So, could you explain this a little bit more in relation to the public's perception about why a road is still closed or appears that no progress is being made?
yeah, so this is definitely something that I know I can even sometimes, even still being in the industry, you're driving on the roadway and you drive through a project every single day, and sometimes it just doesn't look like anything's happening, or there may not be anybody out there working. Um, but if you think about it, when you're driving through that project, if you only drive through there twice a day, you're probably seeing that project for maybe 5, 10 minutes of a 24-hour day where that work could be going on. Imagine someone coming and, if you work in an office environment or you work somewhere, imagine someone coming in and checking on you. And it just so happened to be the time where maybe you had to use the restroom, so you weren't there, or maybe you were, taking 30 seconds to check your phone because someone called you or returning a phone call, or doing something like that. And someone walked in and saw you do that. They'd be like, man, this person's never working or never doing anything. And that sometimes is the perspective that you get when you're driving through. You're only seeing a minute picture in time, and it may look like the roadway is open or drivable, but there's a lot of things that could be going on, or there's a lot of underground work that could be taking place, and a lot of things happening. So kind of similar to baking a cake, right? If you ever had baked a cake, when you're mixing the ingredients, you're doing everything, it's really intense work. There's a lot of visible progress, but then, the cake goes in the oven and it bakes for however long. Well, if you walk into a bakery and you see someone standing there and you're like, well, what are you doing? You're not really working. Well, they just spent 45 minutes to an hour putting everything together, probably going 6 different directions. And then all of a sudden you walk in and you just see him kind of sitting there taking a break. And it's like, well, you don't work very hard. And that sometimes is kind of that perception that I think we need to be aware of, is you're only seeing it at certain times. And a lot of times we're waiting to do work to let people get to and from home. So we're pulling lane closures down or not starting until after that morning rush. So we're not impacting people commuting to and from their jobs. We're trying to have the least impact as possible. So sometimes it may look like everyone's kind of just standing around, waiting around, but that could be the only time that those guys talk to each other throughout the day. And there could be multiple people on the site, but this project, projects are 5-10 miles long. So they may not get a chance to see that person or talk to them because they're in different equipment doing that. And the important part of those meetings in those discussions, that is truly a life and death conversation that could be taking place and making sure they're on the same page. A lot of fatalities that occur within work zones for workers are, for lack of a better term, friendly fire, where they get backed up or rolled over from their own coworkers and their equipment, from not being aware of their surroundings, not being in the right spot. So if you're not aware of everyone that's on that project site, having those conversations, there's potential big safety factors that go into that. So although it may seem like, there's a group of 5 or 6 people having their morning coffee, talking, they're really planning the day, planning their work, and they're waiting for that morning rush to go by for you to get to your office. Now think about that. You're driving to work and they're already there. They already drove to work. They're just waiting to start their day, and you're driving past them and they're out there. So just remember that they're not just there drinking coffee. They're there planning their day, getting their
Yeah.
things ready, and they already arrived at the job site and already arrived to their office while you're driving to yours.
And
So
that's an important point to remember, that communication is absolutely key. So that may be what you're seeing. So what's being done or what could be done to increase the safety of Michigan work zones?
So there's a lot of different things that we're looking at. We're looking at some new different modern technology, but one of the ones that all these tools, one of the best ones is though, you know what the most modern construction tool is?
What is that?
It's the shovel. It's the most groundbreaking.
Oh, you had to do that, didn't you?
I had to do that. Sorry,
Uh,
everyone that knows me knows I got to get a couple dad jokes.
okay, I've been sufficiently punished. So
Yeah. So thank you. That's a good one. I like that. No, so a lot of different things that we're looking at doing are related to newer technology that's out there in leveraging a lot of those new devices. We have a couple grant projects that are working with the federal motor carrier. So it's an FMCMA grant. We have 2 of them. One is called Pause and one is called Safe Zone. And what we're doing is looking at taking our work zones and trying to connect that information and broadcast it into commercial motor vehicles. And that can range from workers being present to any backups or delays that are occurring. And the reason that we're focusing on the large trucks and those commercial vehicles is those are misrepresented or overrepresented in work zone fatality crashes. A lot of the crashes that occur in our work zones, 60% of them are rear end crashes.
huh.
Um,
Okay.
Probably close to half of those that are fatal involve a commercial motor vehicle in the rear end, the queue or the buildup of traffic, and someone not paying attention, not being alert, and smashing into the back of another vehicle. And those are oftentimes where the fatal crashes occur. So if we can give that driver notice or a warning that there's a slowdown or things coming up, which is what we're doing through some video analytics and some other devices that are out there, and we're looking at actually connecting that into the dashboard and having that give them an audible alert so they don't have to touch anything or do anything. It will just tell them work zone ahead, workers are present, and hopefully that'll get them out of that, that driver days that you can sometimes have when you're driving for a long period of time. It kind of breaks up that monotony for them, makes them aware they don't have to touch anything or do anything, take their hands off the wheel, but it just that, hey, there's traffic ahead, and those vehicles, those large trucks don't slow down very easily. So it allows them to slower their speeds and be aware and be alert so they can stop in a safe, assured distance if there is that backup or that exposure
So
there.
is there actually a section of road that has this technology in place?
So right now there is a connected automated vehicle lane on I-94. There's a section you'll see it. They've got what they call a lane separator system, and there's a lot of different testing that's going on there. From my perspective, we're doing a lot of this on different projects across the state in a temporary aspect. So that's more of kind of in the permanent realm, but we're doing a lot of temporary testing with that so we can get connected automated vehicles out there permanently. Um, But from our standpoint, we're doing it on a couple different projects in other sections of I-94. And then we also, the last year or 2 years ago now, maybe, we've done some different pilot projects where we actually had workers with sensors that they were having on them to where the speed limit would actually change based upon the location of the worker. So the stretch of 96 from Lansing to Grand Rapids, we had digital speed limits out there, and the location of the workers would actually change that from 60
Oh,
to 45 flashing instead of having our static signs out there. So
right.
that way it was more accurate, because I know one of the things that I hear a lot of complaints about is, well, when do I go 45? When do I go 60? The workers kind of jump out at me. And this was kind of really making sure that we were only telling them over to slow down when the workers were actually there and they were connected to those signs, and changing them almost in near real time to where they were at, to try to reflect that speed back to the motorist. So that way, when there wasn't a need to slow down, we could let people travel faster, go the exact speed they were. But then making sure when we did have exposure, we did have those narrow, tight spots, we want people to slow down and respect that. And I think being more accurate and truthful with our information really can be the part that we can do as MDOT and as industry to make sure we're providing accurate and real expectations to the motoring public, and not slowing them down when no one's there, and then they go through the next time, no one's there, they don't slow down, and then the fifth time they go through there, we really need them to slow down, but it's like the boy who cried wolf, right? We've gone through so many
Right.
times and there's been no one there, and we've warned them. Well, if we warn them when nothing's there, then we're going to lose that respect and that trust. And that's really that partnership that we have to have with
So
everyone to make sure.
real-time monitoring, it sounds like an awesome idea. What can you tell me about House Bill 4132?
So House Bill 4132 gets into what is called speed safety cameras, oftentimes also referred to as automated enforcement. And I know this topic can scare a lot of people into, the big brother, you're watching me. Um, but what we're seeing is that our speeds on our roadways are super high. People are going excessively fast. And what this would do is this would allow for us to put cameras out in work zones. There would be multiple warnings. These would not be hidden. These would be loud and proud and out there saying, hey, we have this out here, and if you speed through our work zone, you're going to get mailed a ticket. So what that would do is that would change the driving culture. It would change that culture of speeding through work zones is okay.
Yeah.
There's a reason that we reduce it, and having that tied back could really start showing how serious this issue is in changing the safety, not only from the worker standpoint, but from the motorist, because a lot of the crashes and injuries that occur within our work zones are the actual motorists themselves that are taking part of those crashes. Unfortunately, we've had a number of workers that have been hit lately and struck, but the majority of the fatalities over the years, probably 80 to 90% of those are actually motorists driving within the work zone and not the actual workers. And so
And
we're trying to utilize technology like this to really curve that driving habit and just really reduce the excess speeders. So in some other states, I believe it was Maryland, they put this system in place, and they had legislation change it to allow the automated enforcement or speed safety cameras. And they saw an 80 to 90% reduction in people that were traveling over 10 mile per hour over the speed limit within their zone. So we're really focusing on getting those people that are going 80, 85, 90 through our work zones. And yes, those people exist. And those are the people and individuals that are really causing that problem of safety with that excessive speed. And that's really what I think House Bill 4132 would allow us to do. And it really would improve the overall safety of the roadways, and just kind of be that step in that direction of changing that culture that we have, that excessively speeding in work zones is okay. It's not. There's laws and speed limits in place for a reason. And people that are worried about, oh, well, I don't want to get tickets. Well, why, if you're not speeding, then you wouldn't get the ticket. So, it's like you're not going to get arrested for shoplifting if you don't shoplift. If you don't speed, then you don't have to worry about that. I mean,
duh, right?
it's
So,
it's kind of there. It's like the red light cameras too. Those, if you don't run the red light, you don't have to worry about getting a ticket for it.
So is there any outreach taking place to increase education and awareness? What are your ideas for reaching out?
So one of the things that we've really been trying to do is look at driver education and really try to change the culture of the young drivers and making sure that people are talking about work zones and doing that. So National Work Zone Awareness Week is an event that we've been doing to raise awareness. What that is we get together with industry partners and go to an event or a location and just raise the awareness. We've been fortunate enough the past couple of years to have the governor show up. Lieutenant Governor was there last year, but what it is it's really just highlighting a lot of the new technology we're doing, getting together and talking about work zones in general, and just highlighting and raising the awareness that around April is when the construction season really starts kicking up. We're out there just making sure we're reminding people that it's moms and dads, brothers and sisters, aunts and uncles that are out there working, just like you are going to your job and you want to get home safe. We want to do the same thing. We all want to work together. We all want to get home safely, and we all are striving just to make everything safer. So that's one of the big things that we're doing. And then the other one is drivers training. I think there could be a lot more things that we could do within drivers training. There are a few different national courses that are available for young drivers. But one of the things we're trying to do is really raise that awareness. And one thing that I always try to do is tell and share stories of like, what are you teaching your kids as you're driving through a work zone? Are you driving the right speed? And are you slowing down? And are you driving attentively through work zones, especially because your kids see you and they watch you when you do that, and making sure that you're having those conversations and explaining to them what work zone signs are and what's going on. And when you have to get your hours in, making sure your kids are driving through work zones and understand that and aware of those scenarios, because as we all know, there is always construction in Michigan. It seems like there's always projects going on. We are fixing the roads and dams and bridges. So we're trying to do that and improve, but that does take time and take progress to have and fix things. We do have to shut things down. There is some inconvenience, but ultimately we're just trying to make it better and safer and more efficient for everyone to travel to and from where they're going.
Okay, we could talk all that day, but I'm going to have to bring this to a close. You got any final thoughts for me?
Just when you're out there, just understand that driving is a major responsibility. There's a lot of distractions that can occur in the vehicle. Put your phones down, pay attention, try to do things and be prepared for what you're doing. Utilize any technology that you have from navigational devices and things like that, but have them programmed and set up prior to leaving. And then when you're on your travels and on your destination, just making sure you're paying attention, you're attentive, and you're doing that, and understand that, being a minute or two late or slowing down and not being there is better than not getting there at all and having to be in the hospital or no longer with us if you go too fast and you're unfortunate enough to have a fatal crash. So slow down, take your time, pay attention.
Couple of things. I think they should put it in student driving. They should put a chapter in their driving classes. And I saw a bumper sticker just yesterday that said, "Go around me. I left on time." And I go, that's a lot. So our mission with the Michigan Safety Conference is to enhance workplace health and safety by sharing EHS best practices across the safety spectrum. Although there's multiple challenges, the continuing advances in highway safety technology, along with driver feedback and responsibility, we can work together in creating safer travel for all. Thank you to Chris Brookes from the Michigan Department of Transportation for sharing his expertise on the Safety Spectrum podcast. He can be reached at brookesc@michigan.gov. If you have questions about this podcast, the Michigan Safety Conference, or if you'd like to be a guest or sponsor one of our podcasts, I'll mention your name several times. Please check our website out at michsafetyconference.org. Thank you for listening to Safety Spectrum. This is Sheila Ide.